Syracuse basketball can easily make the NCAA tournament, but they can also disappoint again. Let's break it all down.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in a Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And on today's show, it's a very similar episode to what we did in yesterday's podcast, talking about Syracuse football and their floor-ceiling combination. We're doing the same thing for this show, but of course, we're not going to do Syracuse football. We're going to do Syracuse basketball, talk about best case scenario for this team, worst case scenario for this team, and the factors that go into it, right? Tournament expansion, the strengths, the weaknesses of the roster, and most importantly, and we'll begin the podcast talking about this player, Donnie Freeman and his upside for 2025-26. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. Now, before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Syracuse basketball. Well, we haven't done a podcast about them in quite a while, so let's do a quick refresher here for all of you, all right? Maybe this is also your first time watching or listening to Locked On Syracuse, or the first time you have ever tuned into Locked On Syracuse for a basketball podcast. So I would like to welcome all you potentially for the very first time. For context, Syracuse basketball is entering a make or break season under Adrian Autry. He is a third-year head coach now for Syracuse. They have not made the tournament in his first 2 years as head coach. They did not make the tournament in his previous 2 years when he was still an assistant with Syracuse. He had been an assistant for quite a while with Syracuse. I just wanted to mention that, though. It's been 4 consecutive years for Syracuse not making the NCAA tournament, 2 of which with Adrian Autry as the head coach. And quite frankly, rightly or wrongly, based on the roster and this coaching staff, it's tournament or bust. They have to make the NCAA tournament in 2025. Let's go over their ceiling. The best case scenario for Syracuse basketball and how they can achieve that ceiling for this upcoming season. Remember, it's a dream scenario here. This is not necessarily what I am predicting. I am essentially saying if everything breaks right, this is about where Syracuse will finish. Later on in the podcast, I'll give you my overall prediction because what we do is we split the difference between best case scenario and worst case scenario, and we go from there when making a prediction. But to me, when I look at Syracuse's roster and their coaching staff, I think best case, dream, is a top 25 team in the country. It's hard to predict where that would put them in terms of seeding in March Madness. I remember Louisville was around the top 15, top 10, and they got a pretty low seed in March Madness on Selection Sunday. So it does not necessarily, your AP ranking does not necessarily translate to what your seed will be in the NCAA tournament. And that's hard to predict. So overall, I would say top 25 overall team in the country. And we'll see how far that takes them in the NCAA tournament because it's single elimination and one-off shooting night. You can be eliminated. A couple of great shooting nights in a row. Now you're in the Sweet 16, maybe even the Elite 8 and further, right? But overall, when I look at their regular season and maybe even in the conference tournament a little, top 25 overall in the country is their ceiling. How do they get to that ceiling? Well, number one, it starts with Donnie Freeman. He is a true sophomore, returning power forward for Syracuse basketball. Last year, in his freshman season, he averaged 13 points per game 8 rebounds, and he did it in nice efficiency too. He shot over 50% from the field and over 33% from the three-point line, which is pretty good for a power forward. In fact, he was the highest rated Syracuse basketball recruit since Carmelo Anthony in 2002. And a lot of Syracuse's upside is going to depend on Donnie Freeman, because when I look at Syracuse's strengths and weaknesses for their upcoming season, I guess one of the questions I have for Syracuse is, who's their All-American type player? And feel free to answer in the comments section below. I mean, when you look at Syracuse basketball's roster, who do you think could make an All-American team? Like, who's their Walter Clayton? Who's their Zach Edey? You know, one of those guys. I'm not saying you got to win National Player of the Year, but make an All-American team. Who is that for Syracuse basketball? Who is the guy that can, on any given night, say, get on my back, I'm taking us home, we're winning this game, I don't care who we're playing, I don't care who's guarding me, it's over for the other team? Who is that? Well, with all due respect to the other players on Syracuse's roster, I really like J.J. Starling. Naithan George out of the transfer portal as the point guard from Georgia Tech was a massive addition for Syracuse, greatly improves their team from a year ago. I see those guys as all ACC caliber players. They could be among the best players in the conference, but I don't see them as All-American necessarily. I don't think they have that type of upside. But maybe Donnie does. Given his recruiting, the fact that in his freshman season he averages 13 points and 8 rebounds, it's expected that Donnie will take a jump for Syracuse as a true sophomore. It's expected. He's going to take a jump, but it reminds me a lot of Judah Mintz a couple of years ago. For those that don't understand, Judah Mintz was a very good prospect for Syracuse, a higher-end 4-star recruit who had a really strong true freshman season for Syracuse in 2023. And a lot of us, including myself, were expecting that, hey, Judah Mintz is going to take a big step forward in development, and he's going to lead Syracuse to the NCAA tournament. And to be fair to Judah Mintz, okay, he got better. He definitely improved from his true freshman season to his true sophomore season. In fact, he went from 9 20-plus point games in 2023 to 17 20-plus point games in 2024. That being said, his improvement was not enough to the point where it could overcome the other deficiencies on that 2024 roster, and as a result, Syracuse basketball misses the NCAA tournament. Back to Donnie Freeman. In order for Syracuse to reach its ceiling, which in my opinion is a top 25 team in the country, they're going to need a massive step forward in development from Donnie Freeman. Instead of averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds next season, he goes out and he averages 18 and 10. Like, how about that? Because that puts him in the conversation for All-American and possible ACC Player of the Year. That's what Syracuse basketball is probably going to need in order to reach the dream scenario. And then after that, you're looking at 2 more breakouts in order to be a top 25 caliber team. We know what to expect from certain players. Donnie Freeman, we got a good floor of from last year. We know what J.J. Starling is capable of. We know what Naithan George is capable of. And we know what Nate Kings, the wing from Oregon State that Syracuse got this offseason, is capable of. He is the best shooter on Syracuse basketball for this upcoming season, shot nearly 45% from the three-point line a year ago. But even in a dream scenario here, all those guys pan out, they still need more, in my opinion, to be a top 25 team. And even in a dream scenario, again, it's unlikely that every player for Syracuse ends up breaking out. So I will say that Syracuse needs at least 2 breakout players for this upcoming season, and it's got to come from these 4 guys. You're looking at Cincinnati transfer Tyler Betsy, UCLA transfer William Kyle, and then you got the true freshmen coming in, the big ones, Sadiq White and Kyan Anthony. They need 2 of those players to break out in order to be a top 25 caliber team in the country. The most important, in my opinion, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is William Kyle, because he plays the center position. And when you look across the roster at all the position groups, the center position appears to be the biggest question mark for this team this upcoming season. But I'd love to throw it to you right now in the comments section below. What is the ceiling for Syracuse basketball in 2025-26? Meaning, I'm not saying you're predicting this to happen. I'm saying if not all things break right for Syracuse, what's their ceiling? What is their upside? Comment in the comments section below. Again, I believe that if not all things break their way, they are a top 25 caliber team in the country. But unfortunately, most of the time, not everything is going to break any team's way. You're going to have hurdles. You're going to have obstacles. There's going to be injuries involved. There's going to be breakouts, but there's also going to be players who might disappoint. So, coming up, we will discuss some of the concerns and the floor for Syracuse basketball. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are not or are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. We just went over the ceiling for Syracuse basketball, and to summarize it all for you, in case you missed it, they need Donnie Freeman to become an All-American caliber player. They need a couple of guys to break out who are so far unproven, whether it's Tyler Betsy, William Kyle, a couple of the true freshmen perhaps to break out. And also something I didn't really mention in the last segment, they do need some of their players to really stay healthy. I mean, last year they did miss JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman for significant portions of last season. Would it have mattered last year had they been healthy? Honestly, no, not really. They still would have missed the NCAA tournament, but they probably would have been slightly better than 13-18. I still think they would have gone under 500, but they would have been better than 13-18 had those guys been healthy. And Syracuse, in order to reach its ceiling, they probably need their best players to be healthy for most, if not all, of the season. But that's if everything breaks right. That's if everything breaks right. And unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen. So let's talk about the floor. What's the floor for Syracuse basketball? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below here. To me, the floor is missing the NCAA tournament. They are by no means a lock to make it for this upcoming season. Good news is they should definitely make the ACC tournament. I mean, last year, they nearly missed the ACC tournament, which would have been embarrassing. All you got to do is be a top 15 team out of 18 in the ACC to make the conference tournament, and Syracuse nearly missed it. They were pretty close. They just squeaked in. They just enough to have postseason play, and they actually, to their credit, they did win a conference tournament game last year against Florida State. So that was at least something. They won some postseason game, right? This season, I think the floor is higher than that. That's the good news. They have improved this roster, in my opinion, because look, they got these 4 players and they're all probably going to start in their starting lineup here. Naithan George at point guard, JJ Starling at 2, Nate Kings at the 3, and Donnie Freeman at the 4. I think right there is a strong group of 4 players for Syracuse that gives them a better floor than what they had last year. But to me, their floor is still to miss the NCAA tournament. And by the way, I should mention this. ESPN's Pete Thamel tweeted out yesterday, which is Tuesday, June 24th, that the NCAA will decide in the next few weeks whether or not to expand the NCAA tournament to upwards of 76 teams. Now, if the NCAA tournament expands to 76, I still think that their floor is missing the NCAA tournament altogether because, for context, Syracuse basketball a couple of years ago, they went 20-12, and I don't even think they would have made it in a 76-team field that season. So they could still miss even with 76 teams and winning 20 games. But what about Syracuse gives them a floor of missing the NCAA tournament? Number one is the lack of defense on the roster. And I'm not giving the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt either. Because Adrian Autry in his 2 seasons at Syracuse basketball, in each year, the Orange have had a bottom 3 defense in points allowed per game in the ACC. And you can thank Miami for having one of the worst defenses in the country, because if not, they would have had the worst defense last year. Instead, they had the second worst a season ago. But who on Syracuse, personnel-wise, is a good defender? And I've posed this question before, and I'll continue to pose it until we actually get an answer. Because unless we see improvement, which again, I'm not giving this coaching staff the benefit of the doubt with it, there's only 2 guys on the roster I look at and say, hey, they could be good defenders. William Kyle and Sadiq White. And they each have concerns in their own right. William Kyle is an elite shot blocker, but for whatever reason, the Evan Maya metrics don't seem to like him. I guess we'll find out who's right and who's wrong. I just want to point it out. I have no idea if he's actually going to be a good defender or not. And then you got Sadiq White, elite defender in high school, maybe the best in high school coming into Syracuse now. Are you sure that he's going to be able to translate right away? I think he will, at least as a defender, because he's long, he's athletic. I do think he will be a very good defender for Syracuse, but there's still that question mark as a true freshman coming into the Orange this season. And other than those guys, nobody else really on the roster projects to be a strong defender. So that's reason number one why Syracuse, in my opinion, still has a floor that's below the NCAA tournament. And then beyond that is lack of depth. If Syracuse doesn't have players break out, like I mentioned in the first segment and at the beginning of this segment, this team is not going to have a lot of depth. It just won't. In many ways, I could see Syracuse basketball 2026 being just like how it was a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, the team won 20 games. Remember that team? It starts out pretty good. When you look at the roster, you had Judah Mintz, JJ Starling was still there, Malik Brown was there, and Chris Bell was really good in 2024. He was second in the ACC in 3-point percentage at over 42%. He was an elite shooter. But beyond those 4 players, there was no one. They had players, but none of them were really ACC caliber. I mean, look at where some of those guys are transferring now. They lacked a lot of depth in 2024, which had they had a little bit more, maybe they do make the NCAA tournament. And when I look at the 2026 roster, again, it starts out pretty good. Got Naithan George, JJ Starling, Nate Kings, Donnie Freeman. That's a good group of 4 players. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. But beyond those 4, who does Syracuse have? Who's going to step up? And so in a floor scenario, maybe nobody does. Maybe Syracuse lacks the depth this upcoming season. So to me, the floor is missing the tournament due to a lack of defense on the roster and overall lack of depth on the roster, and maybe a slightly below 500 record at 15-16. And that would be really bad if something like that happens. But again, like I said in the last segment, it's unlikely that everything's going to break right, but it also works the other way around. It's also unlikely that everything is going to break wrong for Syracuse this upcoming season, although we saw that last year where literally everything broke wrong. But coming up, I'll give you my prediction, and I would love to hear your prediction right now in the comments section below. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Ever wish managing your money felt easier. With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. So think about it this way. You got a checking account, a savings account. You also got an investment account. You can combine them together with Monarch Money. And take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we still got plenty more to talk about here on today's show, as I'm about to give you my prediction, at least an early prediction for Syracuse basketball this upcoming season. But before we do so, thank you all so much for making it to this point in the podcast. And hey, since you've already made it this far in the podcast, if you can just do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And of course, thank you to all those who continue to like and subscribe to Locked On Syracuse each and every day. You all are truly the best. Let's get into the prediction time, okay? Where do you see Syracuse basketball finishing in 2025-26? Comment in the comment section below. Like I said yesterday with football, I like to split the difference. You got a ceiling where everything breaks right. You got a floor where a lot of things break wrong. You meet in the middle, and you get yourself a win prediction. So with Syracuse, my ceiling is 23 regular season wins. So 23-8 in the regular season. That puts them, I think, on the border at least of top 25. It might be top 25 altogether. And my floor is 15 regular season wins, so slightly under 500. That is an average of 19 regular season wins, meaning Syracuse in the regular season would go 19-12. Now the question is this: is 19 regular season wins enough to put Syracuse basketball in the NCAA tournament? I think there are a couple of factors with this. Number one, does the NCAA tournament expand for 2026? Because if the tournament expands to 76 teams, then 19 regular season wins, I think, puts them at least on the bubble. It will give them a chance, definitely, to make the NCAA tournament. We'll get into one of the other factors in just a moment here. It kind of goes in line with the 19 wins. But it makes it so that maybe a decent showing in the ACC tournament would be enough to propel Syracuse in a 76-team field. If it remains at 68, though, 19 wins is most likely not going to make it for the tournament. They would probably need to win the ACC outright in order to do so. And number two, style points matter. See, that's one of the big differences between college sports and pro sports. In pro sports, when they're determining who makes the playoffs, it's based on purely merit. It's your win-loss record. And then there's tiebreakers beyond that, whether it's how you did head-to-head, how you did in division, how you did in your conference, what was your point differential. All those things factor in. But it's based on merit. Style points do not matter in pro sports as in regard to making the playoffs. In college sports, they do. In college sports, there are so many teams that there's got to be many different ways to try to determine who makes an NCAA tournament and who doesn't make an NCAA tournament. There are over 300 college basketball teams. Even if the tournament expands to 76, think about how many would have a case to be the 76th team. Style points definitely matter. So with Syracuse, let's say they win 19 regular season games. Well, who do they beat? Do they include wins over Tennessee and Duke? Because that would certainly enhance their case. Who do they lose to? Who are their 12 losses? Because if they lose to Binghamton and Drexel, they're not getting in with 19 wins. How does Syracuse win? How does Syracuse lose? Remember last year, they beat Youngstown State in double overtime, right? At least they got a win. But honestly, that pretty much hurt them in the net rankings. That hurt their efficiency. More so than losing a game outright to a team like Texas Tech, because Texas Tech is a really good team. Syracuse lost pretty close to them last season. That's better than barely beating Youngstown State. So style points matter in college sports. And so even though I say, hey, Syracuse 19-12 is my prediction, does the tournament expand? How do they get to 19 wins? What's their pathway? I think those are really the factors when deciding whether or not Syracuse actually makes the tournament or not. But overall, I think they'll be better than last year, which is good because last year they could not be much worse. But I am kind of projecting with my 19-12 record that they are not going to have a miserable year. Last year was miserable, but they will have a frustrating year. In 2024, in my eyes at least, and maybe you feel differently, and certainly looking back on it, it doesn't feel like this, but I kind of considered it a success. Adrian Autry was in year one, and they won 20 games in the regular season for the first time since 2014. That's a fact. So even though they make the NCAA tournament, they still qualified for the NIT. Had they wanted to go to the NIT, they didn't. Okay? But that was year one of Adrian Autry. Then year two happens, and it's a bad year. Miserable year. Winning 19-20 regular season games, if there's no NCAA tournament attached with it, it doesn't really mean anything. It really doesn't. So that's why I'm saying I think this could be a year where they might pick up some good wins. They'll be better than last season. They'll definitely be more enjoyable to watch. But I don't know if they're an NCAA tournament team, at least right now on paper. I don't think I can get there just yet with Syracuse basketball, but maybe you feel differently. So comment in the comment section below. Tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. I'm wearing a Syracuse shirt, I should say. There's a Syracuse basketball background behind me. I'm a Syracuse fan. I'm a Syracuse alum. So I want Syracuse to win. So tell me why they're going to win. Comment in the comment section below. As far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future, tomorrow, we'll go back to football and we'll do a Syracuse wide receiver position preview. And then on Friday, we will do Poll Friday, Syracuse football's non-conference record for 2025. Again, the four non-conference teams are Notre Dame and Tennessee, Colgate, and UConn, not in that particular order. But those are the four non-conference names. And if you want to vote for Poll Friday, good news. You can vote at LO_Syracuse on Twitter or X. And you can also go to Locked On Syracuse on YouTube in the post section, and you will find the question that I put in there. Okay, so that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the near future. And thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show with football recruiting expert Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors and signings each and every day. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I will see you all again soon.